Oluchi hands shook as she stood outside Park Hyun-woo's office at 11 p.m. holding a flash drive containing evidence that could either save his life or end hers. She'd been his executive secretary for 8 months now, and in that time, she learned 3 undeniable truths. 1, he was the most dangerous man in Seoul's underworld. 2, he hadn't touched a woman in 4 years for reasons nobody dared ask about. And 3, she was falling in love with him despite every instinct screaming at her to run. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the flash drive in her trembling hand would trap them both in a sealed room where the air itself would become their enemy, where 4 years of his carefully maintained control would shatter, and where the line between protection and obsession would blur until neither of them could tell the difference. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into this intense story, I need you to do something for me. Drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Seriously, we love seeing how far these stories travel, from the United States to Jamaica to everywhere in between. And I'm not saying you have to subscribe because I know you're classy, expensive, and you don't just give out your trust for free. But hopefully, as you keep watching, we become best friends enough for you to subscribe so you don't miss my next video. Now, let's get into the story. Park Hyun-woo's empire was built on fear, respect, and an iron control that extended to every aspect of his life. At 32, he ran half of Seoul's underground operations with the kind of cold efficiency that made grown men nervous. But there was one thing Park Hyun-woo couldn't control. One weakness he'd hidden for 4 years behind expensive suits and calculated distance. His body had stopped responding to desire the night a rival gang's interrogation had broken something inside him that doctors said might never heal. The medical term was psychogenic erectile dysfunction. The translation was simpler. 4 years of feeling absolutely nothing below the waist, no matter how beautiful the woman, no matter how willing. He tried everything. Doctors, therapists, medications that promised miracles and delivered nothing. Eventually, he had accepted it as permanent damage, a scar that didn't show but never stopped aching. He'd built walls around the wound, told himself he didn't need that part of life anyway, that physical desire was a weakness he was better off without. Then, Oluchi walked into his office 8 months ago for a job interview, and for the first time in 4 years, Park Hyun-woo felt something stir. It wasn't much, just a flicker, a ghost of sensation he'd thought was dead forever. But it was enough to make him hire her on the spot, enough to make him watch her more carefully than he should, enough to make him wonder if maybe, just maybe, the doctors had been wrong about permanent. Oluchi had no idea about any of this. She'd taken the job as executive secretary to Seoul's most notorious crime boss because the pay was incredible and because running from her past in Lagos had left her desperate enough to take risks. She knew Park Hyun-woo was dangerous. Everyone knew that. What surprised her was how professional he was. How he never looked at her the way other men did, never made inappropriate comments or let his eyes linger. It should have been a relief. Instead, it made her curious about the man behind the ice. 8 months of working late nights together. 8 months of watching him command rooms full of dangerous men with nothing but his voice. 8 months of catching him staring at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression unreadable but intense enough to make her skin prickle. And 8 months of Oluchi lying awake wondering what it would take to crack that perfect control. The night everything changed started with a simple request. Hyun-woo called her personal phone at 10:30 p.m., his voice tight with something that might have been stress. "I need you to come to the office. There's a situation." Oluchi knew better than to ask questions over the phone. She dressed quickly, professional skirt and blouse, heels that were practical enough to run in if needed, and drove through Seoul's glittering streets to the Park Tower. The building was mostly empty at this hour, just security and the CEO who apparently never slept. Hyun-woo's office took up the entire top floor, a space designed to intimidate with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and furniture that cost more than most people's cars. He stood at those windows now, his back to her, shoulders tense beneath his perfectly tailored suit jacket. "I received intelligence tonight," he said without turning around. "Someone inside my organization has been selling information to the Jong family. They're planning something big. An attack on me personally." Oluchi's stomach dropped. The Jong family ran the other half of Seoul's underworld, and their hatred for Park Hyun-woo was legendary. Do you know who's betraying you? Not yet. But I know they have access to my schedule, my security protocols, my safe houses. Finally, he turned to face her, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. It wasn't fear. Park Hyun-woo didn't do fear. It was something colder, more calculating. Which means it's someone in my inner circle. Someone I trust. The implication hung heavy between them. Oluchi was part of that inner circle. You think it might be me? I think I don't know who to trust anymore. His eyes locked on hers, dark and intense. But I need someone to help me go through the security footage from the past month. Someone who knows my organization well enough to spot anomalies. Are you willing? It was a test, Oluchi realized. He was watching her reaction, measuring her response. If she refused or seemed nervous, it would confirm his suspicions. If she agreed too quickly, it might seem like overcompensation. She met his gaze steadily. Show me what you need. Something flickered across his face. Approval, maybe, or relief. He gestured to his desk, where 3 computer monitors displayed security feeds. We'll start with the main office building. Look for anyone accessing areas they shouldn't be in. Anyone meeting with people who don't belong. They worked in tense silence, sitting side by side at his desk, shoulders occasionally brushing as they leaned toward different monitors. Oluchi tried to focus on the footage, but she was hyper-aware of Hyun-woo beside her, the subtle scent of his cologne, the controlled precision of his movements, the way his jaw clenched when he was thinking hard about something. Around midnight, Oluchi spotted something. There, she pointed at a monitor showing the basement level from 3 weeks ago. That's Kung Min-so from accounting. What's he doing in the server room at 2 a.m.? Hyun-woo leaned closer, studying the footage. His arm pressed against hers, and Oluchi felt heat bloom where they touched. He shouldn't have access to that area. His voice had dropped lower, that dangerous edge entering it that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. Can you pull up his entry logs for the past month? Oluchi's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up data. But as the information loaded, something else appeared on the screen, a pop-up warning that made Hyun-woo go rigid beside her. Security breach detected. Chemical agent released. Initiating lockdown protocol. The words had barely registered when Oluchi heard it, a soft hissing sound coming from the air vents. At the same moment, steel shutters began dropping over the windows with a mechanical slam that made her jump. The office door sealed with an ominous click of magnetic locks. Hyun-woo was already moving, yanking her away from the desk. Don't breathe it in! He pulled his shirt over his nose and mouth, gesturing for her to do the same. The panic room, now! He dragged her across the office toward what looked like a solid wall of dark wood paneling. His hand slapped against a hidden biometric scanner, and a section of the wall slid open to reveal a small, reinforced room, maybe 12 feet by 12 feet, with its own air filtration system and emergency supplies. They tumbled inside together, and the door sealed behind them with a pressurized hiss. Through the small window in the door, Oluchi could see the main office filling with a faint, greenish mist. What is that? Her voice came out shakier than she wanted. Hyun-woo was already at the panic room's control panel, his fingers moving rapidly across the touchscreen. VX derivative, if I'm reading these sensors correctly. Nerve agent. Kills in minutes if you breathe enough of it. His voice was steady, clinical, but his hands betrayed him. There was the slightest tremor in his fingers. Someone just tried to kill us both. The panic room was designed for exactly this scenario. Sealed environment, independent air supply, reinforced walls that could withstand explosives. But it wasn't designed for comfort. There was a narrow bench along one wall, a storage locker with emergency supplies, and barely enough space for 2 people to stand without touching. Oluchi pressed her back against the wall, trying to process what had just happened. Someone had released nerve gas into Hyun-woo's office. Someone had tried to kill them both. The timing couldn't be coincidence. They'd been investigating the traitor, and the traitor had struck first. How long do we have to stay in here? She asked. Hyun-woo was still at the control panel, pulling up security feeds from outside the panic room. "The air filtration system in my office will clear the agent in about 4 hours. But we have a bigger problem." He turned to face her, and his expression was grim. "Whoever did this knows about this panic room. They would have planned for us making it inside, which means..." The lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, bathing the small space in dim red illumination, but the control panel had gone dark. "Which means they're trying to disable our air supply," Hyun-woo finished. His voice remained calm, but Oluchi could hear the tension underneath. "We have maybe 6 hours of breathable air if the filtration system goes down completely. Less if we panic and hyperventilate." 6 hours, trapped in a 12 by 12 box with Seoul's most dangerous crime boss, while someone tried to kill them both. Oluchi felt hysterical laughter bubbling up in her throat and swallowed it down. "So what do? We conserve oxygen, we stay calm, and we try to figure out who's doing this before they find another way to finish the job." Hyun-woo moved to the storage locker, pulling out bottles of water and what looked like medical supplies. "The emergency beacon is on a separate system. My security team will know something's wrong. They'll come. But can they get to us before the air runs out?" Hyun-woo didn't answer, which was answer enough. If you're feeling the tension right now, hit that like button. It takes 2 seconds, but helps this channel grow so much. And seriously, drop a comment telling me if you'd stay calm in this situation or completely lose it, because I honestly don't know what I'd do. The first hour passed in tense silence. They sat on opposite ends of the narrow bench, backs against the walls, carefully not looking at each other. Oluchi tried to keep her breathing slow and steady, tried not to think about the air getting thinner with each breath, but her mind kept spiraling. 6 hours of air, 4 hours until the office was clear, assuming Hyun-woo's calculations were right, assuming the security team could break through in time, assuming the traitor didn't have another surprise waiting. "Tell me about Lagos." Hyun-woo's voice cut through the silence, startling her. Oluchi looked at him across the small space. His face was half-shadowed in the red emergency lighting, making him look dangerous and vulnerable all at once. "Why?" "Because sitting in silence for 6 hours will drive us both insane, and because I've worked with you for 8 months and know almost nothing about you beyond what was on your resume." He shifted on the bench, trying to find a more comfortable position in the cramped space. "You left Nigeria in a hurry. Why?" It wasn't really a question, more like a statement of fact. Of course he'd investigated her background. Park Hyun-woo didn't hire anyone without knowing every detail of their life. Oluchi considered deflecting, but what was the point? They were trapped together, possibly dying together. Secrets seemed less important when you were counting down your last hours. "I was engaged," she said finally, "to a man who worked for one of Lagos's biggest politicians. I thought he loved me, but it turned out he loved his boss's money more. He tried to use me to embezzle funds, and when I refused, he framed me for it instead. I had to leave the country before I ended up in prison for crimes I didn't commit." Hyun-woo was quiet for a long moment. "Is that why you took a job working for a criminal? Because you'd already been accused of being one anyway?" The question should have offended her, but his tone was genuinely curious, not judgmental. "Maybe. Or maybe I figured if I was going to be treated like a criminal, I might as well work for someone who's honest about what he is." "Honest?" Hyun-woo's laugh was short and bitter. "Is that what you think I am? You don't pretend to be something you're not. Everyone knows what you do, what you're capable of. You don't hide behind false morality or pretend your hands are clean. There's a kind of honesty in that, even if it's brutal. And that appeals to you?" Oluchi met his eyes across the dim space. "It's better than pretty lies." Something shifted in Hyun-woo's expression. a crack in that perfect control. "My fiancée left me 4 years ago," he said abruptly, 3 days before the wedding. "She said she couldn't marry a man who felt nothing, who'd become so cold he might as well be dead inside." The confession hung between them. Oluchi knew she should probably say something comforting, but platitudes felt wrong in this space. What happened to make you that cold? "A business deal gone wrong. I was meeting with the Jang family to negotiate territory. They decided negotiation was for the weak." His voice had gone flat, emotionless. "They took me to a warehouse, spent 6 hours trying to make me give up information about my operations. When torture didn't work, they got creative. Drugs, psychological games, things designed to break you without leaving visible scars." Oluchi felt sick. "Did you give them anything?" "No. I held out until my people found me, but something broke anyway. Something inside that never healed right." He flexed his hands slowly, staring at them like they belonged to someone else. "The doctors called it psychogenic dysfunction, trauma-induced. My body shut down the capacity for physical desire because it associated vulnerability with pain. 4 years and nothing they've tried has fixed it." The confession was so raw, so unexpected, that Oluchi didn't know how to respond. Park Hyun-woo, the man who made hardened criminals nervous, was telling her about his deepest wound while they sat trapped in a metal box waiting to suffocate. "Is that why you never—" She trailed off, not sure how to finish the question. "Why I never touch anyone? Why I keep everyone at arm's length?" "Yes." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "My fiancé said I was half a man, said she couldn't spend her life with someone who couldn't feel. So I stopped trying, built walls high enough that nobody could get close enough to see what was missing." "But you feel other things," Oluchi said softly. "Anger, determination, loyalty to your people. That's not being dead inside. That's just being hurt." "Is there a difference?" "A huge one. Dead means nothing can reach you anymore. Hurt means you're still alive enough to feel pain, which means you're alive enough to heal." Hyun-woo stared at her for a long moment, something unreadable moving across his face. Then, so quietly she almost didn't hear it, "You're the first person who's made me feel something in 4 years." The words hit Oluchi like a physical impact. "What?" "Since you started working for me. Small things at first, awareness when you walked into a room, irritation when you disagreed with me, something that might have been attraction when you smiled." He shifted on the bench and suddenly he was closer, the small space forcing proximity. "I thought it was my imagination at first. 4 years of nothing, and then suddenly this Nigerian woman with no fear and too much courage shows up and makes me feel like maybe I'm not as broken as I thought I was." Oluchi's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Hyun-woo, I know it's inappropriate. You work for me, you're trapped in here with me. This is the worst possible time to say any of this." His voice had dropped lower, more intimate. "But we might die in this room, and I don't want to die without telling you the truth. You wake something in me, Oluchi, something I thought was dead, and it terrifies me more than any threat the Jang family could make." The air between them felt charged, electric. Oluchi knew she should maintain distance, should keep this professional. But they were trapped together, possibly dying together, and he'd just told her something so vulnerable that it made her chest ache. "I'm scared too," she admitted. "Not of dying, although that's terrifying, but of this, of you, of feeling something for a man who could destroy me without even trying. I would never hurt you. You're a crime boss, Hyun-woo. Hurting people is literally your job, not you." The intensity in his voice made her shiver. "Never you. From the moment you walked into my office for that interview, I knew you were different. Dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with weapons or threats, Dangerous because you made me want things I'd given up on. They were sitting closer now, this small space making it inevitable. Oluchi could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the pulse jumping in his throat. What do you want? Hyun-woo's eyes dropped to his lips, then back up. Everything I can't have. Everything I thought was impossible. The moment stretched between them, taut and fragile. Then Hyun-woo moved, closing the distance, his hand coming up to cup her face with a gentleness that seemed at odds with everything she knew about him. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, his face inches from hers. But Oluchi couldn't say any of those things, because she did feel it, had been feeling it for months without admitting it. The pull toward this dangerous, damaged man who looked at her like she was something precious and terrifying all at once. Instead of speaking, she closed the final distance between them. The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant, like Hyun-woo was afraid he'd break something. But then Oluchi's hands fisted in his shirt and pulled him closer, and gentleness gave way to something more desperate. 4 years of repression, 8 months of tension, and imminent death combined into a kiss that felt like drowning and breathing all at once. Hyun-woo made a sound low in his throat, surprise or need or both, and his arms came around her, pulling her against him. The kiss deepened, became more urgent, and Oluchi felt him shudder against her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard in the thin air, Hyun-woo's eyes were wide with something like wonder. "I felt that," he said roughly. "Oluchi, I felt everything. For the first time in 4 years, He stopped, seemed to struggle for words. "You don't understand. I thought I was broken permanently. But you, touching you, kissing you, something's different. Something's working again." The implications of what he was saying hit Oluchi like a wave. He wasn't just talking about emotional connection. He was talking about his body responding, about 4 years of dysfunction potentially reversing because of her touch. "Are you sure?" she asked, almost afraid to hope for him. In answer, Hyun-woo took her hand and placed it over his heart. It was racing, pounding against his ribs like it was trying to escape. "I'm sure. I don't know how, I don't know why, but you're reaching parts of me I thought were dead. You're bringing me back to life, Oluchi. Now, I need you to pause and really think about what's happening here. These two people are trapped, running out of air, and something impossible is happening between them. If you're feeling this moment, if you're invested in their story, please hit that subscribe button, because what comes next is going to test everything, and I don't want you to miss it." The next 2 hours passed differently. They stayed close on the narrow bench, conserving body heat and oxygen, talking in quiet voices about everything and nothing. Hyun-woo told her about building his empire from nothing, about the violence and betrayal that had shaped him. Oluchi told him about growing up in Lagos, about her family who thought she'd abandoned them, about the dreams she'd had before everything went wrong. But underneath the words was a constant awareness of each other, a pull that kept intensifying, despite, or maybe because, of their situation. Every brush of hands felt electric. Every time their eyes met in the dim red light, Oluchi felt her breath catch. Around the 3-hour mark, Hyun-woo's phone, which had been dead since the power went out, suddenly buzzed back to life. He grabbed it, hope flashing across his face. But the message that appeared made him go rigid. "What is it?" Oluchi asked. Hyun-woo turned the screen toward her. The message was simple, brutal. "Did you really think I wouldn't plan for the panic room? The air filtration system is compromised. You have maybe 2 hours before oxygen deprivation causes permanent brain damage. Die slow, Hyun-woo. Think about every person you've destroyed while you suffocate. -M. M. Min-so? Kong Min-so from accounting? It has to be. Hyun-woo's jaw clenched. We saw him on the security footage. He had access to the servers, which means he could have programmed this attack. But why? I barely know the man. What did I do to make him hate me enough for this? The answer came in another text, this one with an attached photo. It showed a young woman, maybe early 20s, with a bright smile and her whole life ahead of her. The caption read, "Her name was Kang Mi-yeon. She was my sister. You killed her 3 years ago when your gang war with the Jang family caught her in the crossfire. She was just walking home from work, wrong place and wrong time. You never even knew her name. But I know yours. And now you'll die the way she did. Slowly, unable to breathe, terrified and alone." The photo and message hit Hyun-woo like a physical blow. Oluchi watched the color drain from his face as memory clearly surfaced. Some incident 3 years ago, collateral damage in a war he'd been too focused on winning to think about the innocent casualties. "I remember," he said, his voice hollow. "There was a shooting outside a restaurant in Gangnam. The Jang family ambushed my people. We returned fire. When it was over, there were bodies. We got out before police arrived. I never knew." He looked at the photo again, and Oluchi saw something break behind his eyes. "She looks like she was kind, like she had people who loved her." "She had a brother who's trying to kill you for revenge," Oluchi said quietly. "Can you blame him?" "No." The word came out flat, defeated. "I can't. I've done terrible things, Oluchi. Killed people, destroyed lives, justified it all as necessary for survival. But this girl, she wasn't part of that world. She was innocent, and I took her life without even knowing it." Oluchi felt her heart break for both of them, for the girl who died, for the brother seeking vengeance, for the man beside her who was finally facing the cost of his choices. What do we do? Hyun-woo was quiet for a long time, staring at the photo. Then he made a decision she could see forming in a real time. We survive. We get out of this room, and then I find Kang In-seo, and I give him what he wants. Which is what? Justice and accounting. Whatever he needs to hear about his sister. That she mattered, that her death wasn't meaningless, that I'm sorry. Hyun-woo looked up, meeting Oluchi's eyes. I can't undo what I did, but I can acknowledge it. And maybe I can be better going forward, if I have a reason to be better. His hand found hers in the darkness, squeezed gently. The implication was clear. She was that reason. Oluchi squeezed back, overwhelmed by the complexity of what she was feeling. This man was a criminal, had blood on his hands, had caused immeasurable pain. But he was also human, capable of growth and remorse, trying to be better in a world that had never rewarded goodness. The air's getting thinner, Hyun-woo said after another hour. His voice sounded strained now, breathing labored. We need to conserve energy. Just stay close. Focus on slow breaths. They shifted positions, lying down on the narrow bench with Oluchi tucked against Hyun-woo's chest, his arms around her. It was the most efficient use of space, but it was also intimate in a way that made Oluchi's heart race, despite the oxygen deprivation making her dizzy. Tell me something good, she whispered against his chest. Something from before everything went wrong. Hyun-woo's hand moved slowly through her hair, the gesture soothing. My mother used to make hatiak on cold mornings, sweet pancakes with cinnamon and brown sugar. The smell would fill our whole apartment. She'd let me help make them, even though I was terrible at it and made a mess everywhere. What happened to her? Cancer when I was 16. After she died, my father fell apart, started drinking, gambling, making bad deals with worse people. By the time I was 20, he owed money to everyone in Seoul's underworld. They killed him for it. His voice was distant, remembering. I inherited his debts and his enemies. Had two choices, die or become more dangerous than anyone who wanted me dead. So I became this. And if you could go back, choose differently? I had saved my mother. Everything else follows from losing her. But if I'd chosen differently, I wouldn't have met you. So maybe some paths are worth walking, even the dark ones. Oluchi felt tears burning in her oxygen-deprived eyes. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me, and we're literally dying. We're not dying. Hyun-woo's voice was firm despite his labored breathing. We're surviving, because I didn't wait 4 years to feel something again just to die before I can figure out what it means, and because you're too stubborn to let a little oxygen deprivation kill you. A little? Oluchi tried to laugh, but it came out as a wheeze. Hyun-woo, I can barely breathe. Everything's getting fuzzy. I know, me too, but stay with me, Oluchi. Stay conscious. Talk to me. Tell me about Lagos, about your family, about everything you want to do when we get out of here. So Oluchi talked, her voice getting weaker as the air got thinner. She told him about her mother who sold fabrics in the market, about her 3 brothers who were probably worried sick about her, about the jollof rice recipe that had been in her family for generations. She told him about wanting to go home someday, to make peace with the past, to introduce him to her family and watch their faces when they realized she'd fallen for a Korean crime boss. The confession slipped out without her meaning it to, fallen for, but Hyun-woo heard it anyway. His arms tightened around her. Say that again. I've fallen for you, Oluchi whispered, too oxygen-deprived to filter herself anymore. I know it's stupid and impossible and probably going to get me killed, but I have. Somewhere between the coffee orders and the late nights, and you looking at me like I'm something precious, I fell. Not stupid, not impossible, just terrifying and perfect and mutual. They were both fading now, consciousness getting slippery, but Oluchi felt something warm bloom in her chest despite the cold fear. If they died here, at least they'd die knowing someone cared. At least they'd die having felt something real. The sound of metal screeching made them both jerk alert. Through the fog of oxygen deprivation, Oluchi heard shouting, saw the panic room door shudder. Boss, can you hear me? The voice was male, panicked, accompanied by the whine of power tools cutting through reinforced steel. Hyun-woo tried to sit up, couldn't quite manage it. Here, he called out, his voice barely audible. We're here. The door burst open, and suddenly there were people in gas masks pulling them out of the panic room into the now-cleared office. Someone pressed an oxygen mask over Oluchi's face, and she gasped as clean air filled her lungs. Beside her, Hyun-woo was getting the same treatment, his security team surrounding him with weapons drawn. Sir, we need to get you to a hospital. You've been in there for 5 hours, another 30 minutes, and... Minso? Hyun-woo interrupted, his voice muffled by the oxygen mask. Minso. Kang Rin-so from accounting. Find him. Bring him to me. Alive. The security team scattered to follow orders. Paramedics were arriving, trying to convince Hyun-woo and Oluchi to lie down on stretchers, but Hyun-woo refused to be separated from her, his hand finding hers and gripping tight even as they were loaded into the same ambulance. You saved my life, he said as the ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't kept me talking, kept me conscious, I would have given up, let the air run out. But you made me want to survive. Oluchi squeezed his hand, still too weak to say much, but the gesture said everything. They'd survive together. Whatever came next, they'd face it together too. The hospital was a blur of tests and concerned doctors. Mild oxygen depredation, they said. No permanent damage. Lucky, they said. A few more minutes, and it would have been a different story. By the time Oluchi was cleared to leave the hospital 8 hours later, Hyun-woo was already gone, released himself against medical advice because his security team had found Kang Min-so. Oluchi should have gone home, should have rested, should have let Hyun-woo handle this himself. But 5 hours in a panic room had changed something fundamental between them. She wasn't just his secretary anymore. She was something more. Partner, confidant, the person who'd seen him at his most vulnerable and hadn't run. So, she had Hyun-woo's dragger take her to wherever he'd gone, which turned out to be a warehouse on the outskirts of Seoul, the kind of place that people went to have conversations that couldn't be overheard. She found Hyun-woo in the main room, standing across from a man tied to a chair. Kang Min-so was younger than she had expected, maybe late 20s, with a desperate look of someone who'd bet everything on revenge and lost. "You should kill me," Min-so was saying as Oluchi approached quietly. "That's what you do, right? Anyone who crosses you dies, so do it. Kill me like you killed my sister." But Hyun-woo didn't move. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at Min-so with an expression Hyun-woo had never seen on him before. Remorse. "I'm not going to kill you." Min-so laughed bitterly. "Why not? I tried to kill you, killed one of your guards in the process of setting up that nerve gas. I deserve it." "Maybe. But your sister didn't deserve what happened to her. She was innocent, caught in a war that had nothing to do with her, and Hyun-woo's voice cracked slightly. "I never even knew her name until today. Miyeon. She was 23 years old, worked at a bookstore, liked cats. I know because I had my people look her up after I saw your photo. She had a life, people who loved her, dreams she never got to fulfill. Because of me. Because I was too focused on winning to think about collateral damage." "So what?" Min-so spat. "That brings her back?" "No, nothing brings her back, but I can acknowledge what I took from you. I can tell you that your sister's death mattered, that she wasn't just collateral damage, that I'm sorry, truly sorry for the pain I caused." Hyun-woo moved closer until he was standing directly in front of Min-so. "You tried to kill me. By rights, you should die for that. But I'm tired, Min-so. I'm tired of revenge and blood and cycles that never end. So here's your choice. I let you go, you disappear, you build a new life somewhere far from Seoul, or you keep seeking revenge and I'll have no choice but to treat you like the threat you are." Min-so stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "You're letting me go? Just like that?" "Not just like that. You'll leave Korea within 48 hours. You'll never contact me or anyone in my organization again. And you'll live, Min-so. You'll live the life your sister should have had. You'll find happiness, build a family, do something good with the years you have left. Because that's what she would have wanted. Not revenge that destroys you, but a life lived fully enough for both of you." The warehouse fell silent except for the distant sound of Seoul's traffic. Oluchi watched from the shadows as Min-so's face cycled through confusion, anger, and finally something that might have been grief. "I spent 3 years planning this," Min-so said, his voice breaking. 3 years of hate keeping me going. What do I do without it?" "You grieve," Hyun-woo said simply. "You let yourself feel the loss instead of burying it in revenge. You remember your sister for who she was, not just how she died. And eventually, maybe, you heal." Hyun-woo gestured to his security team, who cut Min-so's restraints. The younger man stood slowly, rubbing his wrists, still looking like he couldn't quite believe what was happening. "Why? Why spare me? I almost killed you and that woman." "Because someone recently reminded me that being hurt doesn't mean being dead inside. And because I'm trying to be better than what this world made me." Hyun-woo's eyes found Oluchi in the shadows, and the look on his face made her heart skip. "Because I have a reason to be better now." Min-so followed Hyun-woo's gaze, saw Oluchi standing there. Something shifted in his expression. Understanding, maybe? Or recognition of what he was seeing. She must be special. She is, which is why I'm giving you this chance, because she makes me believe in second chances, in the possibility of redemption, in choosing differently even when the old path is easier. Min-so nodded slowly, then turned toward the door, but he stopped, looked back. Mi-yeon would have liked this ending better. She always believed people could change, even when I told her she was naive. Maybe she was right? Honor her by proving her right. Live well, Min-so. That's the only revenge that matters. After Min-so left, escorted by security to ensure he actually left the country, Hyun-woo finally turned to fully face Oluchi. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough." Oluchi stepped out of the shadows, moving toward him. That was either the stupidest thing you've ever done or the bravest. I haven't decided which. Maybe both. Hyun-woo reached for her, pulling her close with a desperation that spoke to how close they'd come to dying. He could come back, try again. I just made myself vulnerable by showing mercy. Or you just made the choice that breaks the cycle. Violence answered with violence. That never ends. But this, mercy when revenge was expected, that's how things actually change. When did you get so wise? Hyun-woo's arms tightened around her, his face buried in her hair. I had a good teacher. This man I work for, dangerous, complicated, but trying to be better. He's teaching me that people are more than their worst moments. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in a warehouse that probably had seen 100 violent endings, but was witnessing something different tonight. Healing instead of harm, choice instead of inevitability. I meant what I said in that panic room, Hyun-woo said, finally pulling back to look at her. All of it. You make me feel things I thought were dead. You make me want to be someone worthy of you. But Oluchi, my world is dangerous. What happened tonight, that could happen again. Someone else seeking revenge, another enemy, more threats. I can't promise you safety. I'm not asking for safety. I'm asking for honesty, for partnership, for you to stop trying to protect me by keeping me in the dark and instead trust me to make my own choices about what risks I'm willing to take. And if I can't, if the idea of you in danger makes me crazy, then we work on it together, because that's what people do when they care about each other. They figure it out. I know what you are, Hyun-woo. I know what you've done. And I'm choosing you, anyway, not despite the darkness, but with full knowledge of it. Can you accept that? Instead of answering with words, Hyun-woo kissed her. It was different from the desperate kiss in the panic room. This one was slower, deeper, a promise instead of a goodbye. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Hyun-woo's eyes were bright with something that looked dangerously like hope. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice rough. What happened in that panic room, it wasn't just emotional. My body responded to you, Oluchi. After 4 years of nothing, I felt desire again. Real, physical desire. The doctor said it might never come back, that the trauma was too deep. But you... He stopped, seemed to struggle for words. You're healing. Parts of me I thought were permanently broken. The confession made Oluchi's breath catch. She'd understood what he was implying earlier, but hearing him say it explicitly was different. Are you sure? Sometimes extreme situations can cause temporary... I'm sure. Hyun-woo took her hand, placed it over his heart like he had in the panic room. It's not just the situation, it's you. The way you challenge me, the way you refuse to be intimidated, the way you see me as a person instead of just a threat. You make me feel human again. You make me feel everything. That's a lot of pressure to put on one person, Oluchi said, but she was smiling despite the tears gathering in her eyes. I know. And I'm not saying you're responsible for fixing me. I have to do that work myself. But you make me want to do the work. You make me believe it's possible. He pulled her closer until they were pressed together from shoulder to hip. Stay with me. Not as my secretary, as my partner. Help me figure out how to be better. Help me navigate this thing between us. Just stay. Oluchi knew she should probably think about this more carefully. She'd barely been in Seoul a year, had taken this job as a temporary escape from her troubles in Lagos. Getting involved with Park Hyun-woo meant stepping fully into his world, accepting all the danger and complexity that came with it. It meant potentially never going home to Nigeria, or at least not the way she had imagined. But sometimes the heart makes decisions the head can't argue with. Okay, she said simply. I'll stay. But we're doing this my way. Equal partners, no secrets, no trying to protect me by keeping me in the dark. And if you ever go back to being that cold, distant boss who barely acknowledged me, I'm walking out and never looking back. Deal. Hyun-woo sealed the promise with another kiss, this one tinged with relief and joy and the fragile hope of new beginnings. They left the warehouse together as dawn was breaking over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Hyun-woo's driver was waiting, and they slid into the back seat in comfortable silence. "Where to, sir?" the driver asked. Hyun-woo looked at Oluchi, a question in his eyes. She understood what he was asking. Her apartment or his penthouse? Separate or together? "Together," she said softly. "Take us home." The word home made something shift in Hyun-woo's expression, made his grip on her hand tighten. Like maybe, finally, after 4 years of existing in cold isolation, he was starting to believe in the possibility of warmth again. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's a lot for one night, right? From near death to mercy to love confessions to new beginnings. But sometimes that's how life works. Sometimes the worst moments crack us open enough to let the best things in. If you're feeling the story, then stay with me, because their story isn't over, not by a long shot. The next few weeks unfolded in a pattern that felt both surreal and surprisingly normal. Oluchi officially moved from her small apartment to Hyun-woo's penthouse, though she kept her place as a safety net. Old habits from Lagos dying hard. She continued working as his secretary during the day, but the dynamic had shifted. They were partners now, in business and in life, and Hyun-woo made sure everyone in his organization knew it. Some of his people adjusted easily. Others, especially the old guard who'd been with him for years, struggled with the idea of their cold, untouchable boss suddenly having a relationship. But Hyun-woo made it clear, disrespect Oluchi and you answer to him, and nobody wanted to answer to Park Hyun-woo. Oluchi also insisted on calling her family. It was time, she decided. Time to stop running from her past and face it head on. The conversation with her mother was tearful and complicated. 3 years of silence couldn't be bridged in one phone call. But it was a start. "Noam," her mother said, using the Igbo endearment that meant "my child." "I thought you were dead. Your brothers and we thought—" "I'm sorry, Mama. I was scared. The man I was engaged to, he framed me. I thought if I contacted you, he might use you to find me." "And now? You're safe now?" Oluchi looked across the penthouse at Hyun-woo, who was reviewing contracts at his desk, but clearly listening to her side of the conversation. "I'm safe, and I'm happy. And I'm with someone who—" She paused, not sure how to explain this. "Someone who makes me want to be brave instead of just running away." "This someone, he treats you well?" "He does. He's complicated, Mama. His life is complicated. But he's good to me, and he's trying to be better." Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then, "Bring him home. Let me see this man who makes my daughter brave. Let me see if he's worthy of you." The suggestion terrified and thrilled Oluchi in equal measure. Bringing Park Hyun-woo, Seoul's most notorious crime boss, home to meet her traditional Igbo mother? That was either going to be a disaster or the most interesting family gathering in history. When she told Hyun-woo about the invitation later that night, his expression was carefully neutral. "You want me to meet your family? I want you to know where I come from, who I am beyond Seoul and this life." Oluchi moved to where he sat, settling onto his lap in a gesture that had become comfortable between them. "Unless you're scared of my mother, which would be understandable, she's terrifying. I've faced down rival gangs and assassination attempts. I think I can handle your mother." But there was something vulnerable in his eyes. What if she doesn't approve? What if she sees me for what I am and tells you to run? Then I'll tell her I'm not running anymore, that I choose you with full knowledge of who you are. Oluchi kissed him softly. "But I think she'll surprise you. My mother has always been able to see past what people are to who they're trying to become." So, 2 weeks later, they flew to Lagos. It was Hyun-woo's first time in Nigeria, and Oluchi watched with amusement as Seoul's most notorious crime boss navigated the chaos of Murtala Mohammed International Airport looking slightly overwhelmed. "It's so loud," he said, as they pushed through crowds towards baggage claim. "This is us at our calmest." Oluchi grabbed his hand, pulling him through the throng with practiced ease. "Just stay close and try not to look like a wealthy foreigner. That's how you get pickpocketed." Her brother Obi met them at arrivals, and his first words upon seeing Hyun-woo were, "This is the Korean? Sister, you didn't say he was this..." He gestured vaguely at Hyun-woo's height and build. "Intimidating." "Obi, be nice." Oluchi hugged her brother tight, blinking back tears. 3 years. 3 years since she had seen her family. "Where's Mama?" "Home, cooking a food to feed the entire neighborhood." You know how she gets. Obi loaded our bags into his car, a beat-up sedan that had seen better days, and they began the drive to the family home in the mainland. Hyun-woo was quiet during the journey, taking in Lagos with the same intense observation he applied to everything. The traffic was insane. Vendors weaved between cars selling everything from phone chargers to roasted corn, and the energy was so different from Seoul's ordered efficiency that I wondered if I'd made a mistake bringing him here. But when they pulled up to her childhood home, a modest compound with peeling paint and her mother's garden taking over the small front yard, Hyun-woo smiled for the first time since landing. "It's lovely." "It's falling apart," Oluchi said, seeing it through his eyes. Compared to his penthouse, this place was practically poverty. "It's loved, that's different than lovely. But better." He squeezed her hand. "I can see you growing up here. It explains so much about you." Her mother emerged from the house before they could knock, and Oluchi felt emotion slam into her chest. Adane Nuaku looked older, more tired than Oluchi remembered, but her eyes were the same, sharp, assessing, missing nothing. "Mama," Oluchi whispered, and then she was wrapped in her mother's arms, crying into her shoulder like she was 5 years old again. "Noam," her mother murmured, rocking her gently. "My child, you're home. You're finally home." When they finally separated, her mother turned her attention to Hyun-woo, who'd stood respectfully back during their reunion. She looked him up and down with an expression that made even him seem slightly nervous. "So, you're the man who makes my daughter brave," she said in English accented with Igbo cadence. "Yes, Mom." Hyun-woo bowed in the Korean style, a gesture of respect. "Thank you for welcoming me into your home." Her eyes narrowed. "You're too handsome. Handsome men usually bring trouble." "Mama!" Oluchi protested, but Hyun-woo laughed, a real laugh that Oluchi rarely heard from him. "You're probably right, Mom, but I'm trying to be the kind of trouble that protects rather than harms." Something shifted in her mother's expression. "We'll see. Come inside. I've made jollof rice, egusi soup, and fried plantains. Let's see if Korean stomachs can handle real food." The meal was chaotic in the best way. Her mother, 3 brothers, and various cousins and neighbors who'd heard Oluchi was home all crowded around the table. They peppered Hyun-woo with questions in a mix of English and Igbo, teased Oluchi mercilessly for everything from her Seoul accent to her Korean boyfriend, and created the kind of warm and noisy chaos that Oluchi hadn't realized she had been desperately missing. Hyun-woo handled it all with surprising grace. He tried every dish her mother put in front of him, even the ones that made his eyes water from spice. He listened to her brother's stories with genuine interest. He let her cousins teach him Igbo phrases, butchering the pronunciation in ways that made everyone laugh. And through it all, Oluchi watched him slowly relax, watched the tension he carried in Seoul melt away in the warmth of her family's acceptance. Later that night, after everyone had left and her brothers had gone to bed, Oluchi found her mother and Hyun-woo on the small back porch, talking quietly in the darkness. "My daughter says you're dangerous, that your work in Seoul is not always legal." That's true, Hyun-woo replied steadily. I won't lie to you about what I am, Mrs. Nowaku. I've done things I'm not proud of, hurt people, made choices I can't take back. And now, I'm trying to be better because your daughter makes me want to be better, because she deserves someone who's worthy of her courage and kindness, and I'm trying to become that person. Her mother was quiet for a long moment. Then, the best marriages, the ones that last, they're not built on perfection. They're built on two people choosing each other every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Can you do that? Can you choose my daughter every day, even when your old life pulls at you? Yes. No hesitation, no doubt. Every day for the rest of my life. Then you have my blessing. But Hyun-woo, her mother's voice hardened, if you hurt her, if you break her heart, if you make me regret this blessing, I will find a way to make you pay. I may not have your resources or power, but a mother's curse is a terrible thing. Do you understand? I understand. And I promise you won't need to curse me. Oluchi is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I won't waste that gift. Oluchi retreated before they could see her, heart full to bursting. She'd been so afraid of bringing these two worlds together, Lagos and Seoul, her past and her present, family and new love. But watching them bridge that gap, watching Hyun-woo win over her skeptical mother with nothing but honest vulnerability, made her believe that maybe, just maybe, they could actually make this work. The rest of their week in Lagos was equally healing. They visited her old haunts, met her friends who'd thought she was dead, confronted the man who'd framed her, with Hyun-woo's intimidating presence ensuring the confrontation stayed verbal rather than violent. They laughed, ate too much, danced to Afrobeats at her cousin's party, and slowly stitched together the pieces of Oluchi's life that had been torn apart 3 years ago. On their last night, lying in her childhood bedroom, with Hyun-woo beside her in a bed too small for both of them, Oluchi felt peace settle over her for the first time in years. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" "For coming here. For meeting my family. For not being scared off by my mother's threats, or my brother's interrogation, or Lagos's chaos." "Why would I be scared off?" Hyun-woo pulled her closer, tucking her against his chest. "This is you, Oluchi. All the parts of you. The Seoul professional and the Lagos daughter, and everything in between. I love all of it." The word love hung in the air between them. They hadn't said it explicitly before, had danced around it with implications and gestures, but never the actual word. "I love you too," Oluchi said, finally giving voice to what she'd known for weeks. "Even though you're dangerous and complicated and probably going to give me a heart attack with your work someday, I love you." Hyun-woo's response was a kiss that conveyed everything words couldn't. Gratitude and desire and promise and home. But the peace couldn't last forever, because back in Seoul, someone was watching. Someone was waiting. Someone who hadn't forgotten about Park Hyun-woo's mercy toward Kang Min-seo, who saw that mercy as weakness, who was planning something that would test everything Oluchi and Hyun-woo had built together. The message came 3 days after they returned to Seoul. Oluchi found it on Hyun-woo's desk while delivering morning coffee, a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photograph and a note. The photograph showed Hyun-woo and Oluchi in Lagos, clearly taken without their knowledge, walking hand in hand through a market, laughing at her mother's house. The intimacy captured in each image made my skin crawl. The note was worse. "You spared Min-seo. Noble. Stupid. Now everyone thinks Park Hyun-woo has gone soft. Time to remind Seoul what happens to crime bosses who prioritize love over power. She's beautiful, by the way. I wonder how long she'll stay that way. Day J. J.W. Jongwon-shik, head of the Jong family. The very people whose territory war killed Minso's sister. The very people who tortured Hyun-woo 4 years ago. Oluchi's hand shook as she showed the note to Hyun-woo. His face went through several expressions. Shock, rage, fear, before settling into cold calculation. He knows about you. He knows you matter to me, which means he'll use you to get to me. Hyun-woo is already pulling up security protocols on his computer, making calls to increase protection. I need to move you somewhere safe, somewhere he can't reach. No. Oluchi's voice was firm. We are not doing this. We are not letting him dictate our lives. Oluchi, you don't understand. Jongwon-shik he's worse than anyone else in Seoul's underworld. What he did to me 4 years ago, that was merciful compared to what he's capable of. I can't let you hurt you. I'd rather give up everything, my empire, my power, everything, than risk you. And I'd rather stand and fight beside you than hide while you face this alone. Oluchi moved around the desk, forcing him to look at her. You said we're partners, equal partners. That means you don't get to make these decisions unilaterally. That means we figure this out together. This isn't a negotiation. You're right, it's not. Because I'm not negotiating. I'm staying. Oluchi's voice softened. Hyun-woo, I know you're scared. I'm terrified too. But we survived a panic room together. We survived nerve gas and oxygen deprivation. We'll survive this too. Together. The argument that followed was intense. Both of them too stubborn to back down. But eventually, Hyun-woo conceded. Not because Oluchi convinced him she was right, but because he realized she wouldn't leave even if he ordered her to. And maybe, just maybe, they stood a better chance together than apart. So there we have it, beautiful people. Oluchi and Hyun-woo found each other, healed each other, and built something real together. But now their biggest test is coming. Jongwon-shik and whatever horror he's planning. Will their love survive? Will Hyun-woo's newfound mercy prove to be his downfall? You'll have to stay tuned for part 2 to find out. If you want to see what happens next, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We'll be posting the continuation soon. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. Drop a comment telling me what you think Jongwon-shik is planning, and whether you think mercy was the right choice or a fatal mistake. I love reading your theories. You all are so smart. And please, take 2 seconds to hit that like button. It helps this channel grow and means we can keep bringing you these intense, emotional stories. Thank you so much for watching, for investing in these characters, for being part of this journey. Until next time, remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose love, even when danger is knocking at your door. Stay blessed, everyone. Thanks for watching.